Grab your favorite beverage and settle in, because the stakes have never been higher for the Spencer family, and a terrifying new chapter is about to unfold right before our eyes. The ocean breeze whipping off the Malibu coast usually brought a sense of peace to the sprawling Spencer beach house. But on this particular afternoon, the crashing waves mirrored the violent storm brewing within Katie Logan's heart. Driven by a fierce, uncompromising maternal instinct, Katie gripped the leather steering wheel of her car until her knuckles turned white. She was a woman on a mission, a mother bear who had just uncovered a truth so dark and dangerous that it threatened to consume her only son. The manila folder sitting on the passenger seat next to her felt as heavy as a lead weight. Inside that unassuming folder lay the absolute destruction of Melissa Dillon's carefully crafted facade. Katie had spent days digging, utilizing every resource at the Spencer family's disposal, and what she had found was enough to send a chill down her spine. The sweet, innocent assistant who had been slowly sinking her claws into a vulnerable Will Spencer was nothing more than a dangerous grifter hiding behind a web of lies, fake aliases, and a horrifying connection to a fatal tragedy. Katie's mind raced with the terrifying details of her investigation as she pulled into the driveway of the beach house. She had discovered that Melissa Dillon was previously operating under the alias Nancy, a name that Wyatt Spencer had stumbled upon but hadn't fully unraveled. More chillingly, the documents in Katie's possession definitively linked Dillon to the horrific accident that had claimed the life of Luna Nozawa. This wasn't just a case of a social climber looking for a wealthy husband. This was a woman with a dark, potentially lethal past who was now positioning herself to become the next Mrs. Will Spencer. Katie knew that Will, currently spiraling into a deep, alcohol-fueled depression after his violent altercation with R.J. Forrester and the subsequent heartbreaking rejection by Electra Forrester, was the perfect, easy prey for a predator like Dillon. He was blinded by grief and guilt, completely oblivious to the snake coiling itself around him in his own home. Katie was determined to sever that connection today, permanently and without mercy. Stepping out of her car, Katie marched toward the front door with a purposeful, unyielding stride. She didn't bother to knock. Pushing the heavy oak door open, she stepped into the luxurious living room, her eyes immediately locking onto the intruder. Melissa Dillon was lounging on the plush sofa, sipping a glass of expensive sparkling water, looking entirely too comfortable in a home that did not belong to her. At the sight of the Logan matriarch, Dillon immediately pasted on her signature sugar-sweet smile, the very same mask she had used to fool everyone at Forrester Creations. She stood up, smoothing down her designer dress, and offered a greeting that dripped with false warmth and feigned innocence, but Katie was immune to the performance. She didn't return the smile, she didn't even offer a polite hello. Instead, Katie walked straight to the glass coffee table and slammed the thick manila folder down with a resounding smack that echoed through the quiet house. The sharp noise caused Dillon to flinch, her perfectly manicured facade cracking for just a fraction of a second before she attempted to recover her composure. Katie's voice, cold and sharp as a scalpel, sliced through the tension in the room. She didn't mince words. Looking Dillon dead in the eye, Katie called her by her true, hidden name, Nancy. The color instantly drained from Dillon's face. The sweet, innocent girl routine vanished in the blink of an eye, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated panic. Katie systematically opened the folder, spreading the damning documents, background checks, and police reports across the table for Dillon to see. She detailed every single lie, exposing the calculated manipulation Dillon had used to infiltrate the Forrester and Spencer families. Katie's voice rose with righteous fury as she brought up Luna Nozawa's fatal accident, making it abundantly clear that she knew exactly how deeply Dillon's hands were stained by the tragedies of the past. With the evidence laid bare, Katie delivered her uncompromising ultimatum. She demanded that Dylan pack her bags immediately, walk out the front door, and disappear from Will Spencer's life forever. Katie promised that if Dylan ever came within 100 feet of her son again, she would take this folder directly to the police, to Bill Spencer, and to the media, ensuring that Dylan would spend the rest of her life behind bars, utterly ruined. Katie stood tall, exuding the formidable power of the Spencer and Logan dynasties combined, fully expecting the exposed grifter to crumble in defeat, pack her things, and run for the hills. But Katie had fatally underestimated the sheer, terrifying desperation of a woman who was standing on the precipice of losing the ultimate prize. Inside Melissa Dillon's mind, a chaotic, desperate storm was raging. She was so close to securing the Spencer billions. She had already managed to sleep on Will's couch. She had kissed him. She had successfully positioned herself as his sole emotional support while the rest of his family and friends had turned their backs on him. She was inches away from securing a life of unimaginable wealth and power, a life that would erase her dark past and elevate her to the top of Los Angeles high society. The thought of losing it all, of being thrown into a cold prison cell and stripped of her glamorous future, triggered a primal, sociopathic survival instinct within her. The mask of the good girl didn't just slip. It shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The panicked glint in Dylan's eyes slowly morphed into something cold, calculating, and incredibly dangerous. The atmosphere in the beach house shifted drastically, the air growing thick and suffocating. Dylan's posture changed. The submissive, sweet assistant vanished, replaced by a cornered predator ready to strike. She looked at the documents on the table, then slowly raised her eyes to meet Katie's unwavering glare. When Dylan finally spoke, her voice was completely devoid of its usual melodic warmth. It was a low, venomous hiss that sent an involuntary shiver down Katie's spine. Dylan coldly stated that she had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, and come too far to let a meddling mother ruin her destiny. Katie, realizing too late that the woman standing before her was far more unhinged than she had anticipated, took a cautious step back, reaching for her phone in her designer handbag. But before Katie's fingers could even graze the screen, Dylan lunged. The physical altercation was sudden, brutal, and chaotic. Fueled by adrenaline and the terrifying prospect of losing her Spencer dreams, Dylan possessed an unexpected, feral strength. She tackled Katie, knocking the phone out of her hand and sending it skittering across the hardwood floor. Katie fought back fiercely, her own maternal desperation fueling her strikes, but she was caught off guard by the sheer viciousness of Dylan's assault. The two women struggled violently against the backdrop of the luxurious beach house, knocking over expensive vases and crashing into the furniture. Despite Katie's valiant efforts to defend herself, Dylan managed to gain the upper hand, using her weight and momentum to pin the Logan matriarch against the heavy oak door leading to the basement. With a chilling ruthlessness, Dylan overpowered Katie, twisting her arm and forcing her down the narrow, dimly lit staircase that led into the depths of the beach house's extensive wine cellar. Katie stumbled, crying out in pain and shock as she tumbled down the last few steps, hitting the cold stone floor of the subterranean room. The wine cellar, usually a place of luxury and celebration, instantly transformed into a dark, damp, and terrifying prison. The air down there was heavy, smelling of aged oak, cork, and the undeniable scent of fear. Katie scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird, but before she could rush back up the stairs, Dylan was already standing at the top, a dark silhouette framed by the light of the hallway. Looking down at her captive, Dylan's face was twisted into a mask of pure, malicious triumph. She delivered a threat so bone-chilling that it seemed to freeze the very air in the cellar. Dylan warned Katie that if she ever managed to get out, and if she breathed a single word of this to Bill Spencer or to Will, she would ensure that Katie never saw the light of the sun again. Dylan made it horrifyingly clear that she was willing to do whatever it took, up to and including murder, to protect her path to the Spencer fortune. With those final, terrifying words hanging in the damp air, Dylan grabbed the heavy, reinforced wooden door of the wine cellar and slammed it shut. The loud, echoing click of the heavy deadbolt sliding into place sounded like a death knell in the pitch-black darkness of Katie's new prison. Upstairs, the silence of the beach house returned, broken only by the sound of Melissa Dillon's heavy, ragged breathing. She stood alone in the hallway, her chest heaving as she processed the massive, irreversible line she had just crossed. But the panic was short-lived. A chilling, sociopathic calm washed over her. Dylan moved quickly and methodically, picking up the scattered documents, the police reports, and Katie's dropped cell phone. She shoved all the damning evidence, along with Katie's designer handbag, into a dark duffel bag and shoved it deep into a hall closet, completely erasing any trace of the Logan matriarch's visit. She then walked to the hallway mirror, smoothing her disheveled hair, adjusting her dress, and practicing her sweet, innocent smile until it looked flawless once again. She was ready to resume her performance. Not a moment too soon, the sound of a key turning in the front door echoed through the foyer. The heavy door swung open, and Will Spencer stumbled into the beach house. He was a tragic sight, a shadow of the confident young executive he used to be. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes were bloodshot and heavy with grief, and the distinct smell of expensive bourbon clung to him like a second skin. He was completely broken, his spirit crushed by the violent end of his relationship with Electra and the harsh banishment he had faced from Eric Forrester. Will was drowning in a sea of guilt and isolation, desperately in need of a lifeline, completely and utterly. Oblivious to the terrifying nightmare that had just unfolded in his own home, mere feet away from where he stood. Dylan's transition was seamless and horrifying to witness. The violent captor who had just locked a woman in a basement vanished, instantly replaced by the loving, devoted, and deeply concerned friend. She rushed to Will's side, her face a perfect picture of gentle empathy and soft affection. She wrapped her arms around his waist, supporting his unsteady weight, and murmured soothing, comforting words into his ear. She told him that she was there for him, that she would never leave him, and that everything was going to be all right. She guided the broken Spencer heir toward the plush living room sofa, gently easing him down and offering to fetch him a glass of water and some aspirin. Will, blinded by his own pain and desperate for any source of comfort, leaned into her touch, completely unaware that he was being cradled by a dangerous predator. The dramatic irony of the situation was suffocating. The stark, horrifying contrast between the scene playing out in the sunlit living room and the terrifying reality unfolding in the darkness below was enough to make one's blood run cold. Upstairs, Melissa Dillon was weaving her intricate web of lies tighter and tighter around Will, solidifying her position as his indispensable savior, securing her grip on the Spencer fortune with every gentle stroke of his hair. She was playing the role of the angel of mercy to absolute perfection, her eyes shining with fake, unshed tears of sympathy for the man she was actively deceiving. Meanwhile, down in the pitch-black, freezing confines of the wine cellar, Katie Logan was fighting a desperate battle for survival. The darkness was absolute, pressing in on her from all sides, but the fierce, indomitable Logan's spirit refused to be broken. Katie blindly felt her way along the cold stone walls, her hands brushing past rows of expensive vintage wine bottles. She knew that screaming would be useless. The heavy, soundproofed door and the thick floors of the beach house would muffle any cries for help. She had to be smart. She had to find a way to alert Will to her presence without triggering Dylan to commit an even more unspeakable act of violence. Katie's hands frantically searched the dark, eventually closing around a heavy, solid object, a large, empty magnum bottle of champagne. Gripping it tightly, she moved toward the ceiling of the cellar, right below where she knew the main living room was located. She needed to send a signal, an SOS that would cut through Will's drunken haze, but perhaps go unnoticed by her captor. With her heart pounding in her chest, Katie raised the heavy bottle and began to strike the wooden beams of the ceiling. Thump, thump, thump. She pounded with all the strength she had left, praying that the rhythmic, desperate vibrations would travel up through the floorboards and reach her son. Upstairs, Will was resting his heavy head on Dylan's shoulder, his eyes half closed as he succumbed to the exhaustion of his depression. Suddenly, a faint, rhythmic thudding sound echoed through the floor, a subtle vibration that vibrated against the solace of their feet. Will stirred, his brow furrowing in confusion as he slurred a question, asking Dylan what that strange noise was. Dylan stiffened, her heart skipping a beat as her eyes darted toward the floorboards. The sweet, comforting smile on her face froze, but her voice remained perfectly, terrifyingly steady. Without missing a beat, Dylan smoothly lied, softly telling Will that it was just the old beach house plumbing acting up, or perhaps the strong ocean wind rattling the loose shutters outside. She gently stroked his cheek, urging him to close his eyes and rest, effectively silencing his suspicions. As Katie's desperate, muffled pleas for life continued to echo silently in the dark abyss below,